There's no need to fret, everyone. I've actually got something productive to do today that won't bore you to death, or at least not immediately. Harvest is drawing somewhat near, which means it's time to start taking a look at our header equipment. And I might as well make sure that the brand new combine has oil. You never know with these John Deere factories how it's gonna come. Okay, she's full. That's what a brand new 13.5 liter John Deere Tech engine looks like. The hydraulic oil reservoir does look slightly low, but it's on the sight glass, so we're not gonna worry about that today. Last year, both of our C8R corn heads were brand new, so obviously there wasn't any kind of pre-season maintenance to be done. This year is a little bit different in the fact that each of them have had a fall of use. We've had one of them looked over at the local John Deere dealership to address a bearing issue or a gearbox noise that my dad was concerned about, and they claim that it sounds like that because that's the way it is. So I guess that's something to check off the list. But we're gonna pick them up, look them over, and get them in working shape so they can sit in the barn for 5 or 6 more weeks before we pick corn. Bum. Oh, completely forgot that this thing has no fuel in it, so I probably ought to stop by the old diesel tank. While we let this beast warm up a little bit before we back out and get some fuel, I am just going to put a quick disclaimer on the video. We are, in fact, going to run an 8-row corn head on an S780 combine. I just want you all to know that and be well aware, because last year when we put the 8-row on this combine, or its predecessor, you would have thought I shot the Pope. It works, guys. It's not that big of a deal. If there's foot pegs, you gotta use them. I don't make the rules. Nothing quite like trusting a dinky backup camera when you're reversing a $600,000 combine. The boss called me and informed me that we're actually close to empty on diesel fuel in our tanks here at the farm. We haven't picked up any of our contracted fuel for this fall, which we're still 5 or 6 weeks away from needing it. And we don't really want to suck the fuel out of the bottom of the tanks. That's typically when you get a lot of that grime or inert material you don't want to run through your fuel filters. So I'm going to put 75, 80, maybe 100 gallons in. That should run us for the day, although this S780 probably uses that much fuel just sitting here idling. That's full enough. Did my good deed for the day. Just got to do a quick jog down the road to the corn head. Totally missed this. Just absolutely love driving combines down the road. We've got one corn head that was looked at, parked away here at the red shed. The other one is still down the road in its winter storage position. So we're going to work on the one that's easiest to get to first, then we'll go get the other one. I want the record to note that I did power wash all of our header equipment this fall, but for some reason it's still dirty. I guess that's what happens when you store them in outside, inside look. Huh. Take off our rubber. It looks right. Now that was an impressive start to the year in the combine. It's only downhill from here, folks. So basically we got all the snouts up out of the way. When you check the gearboxes in there, the chain tightness, and a few other things on the head. But supposedly these new C8R style corn heads are more reliable and less maintenance. Well, to no surprise, the chains don't need much work. 1/8 of an inch, a little more slack there. Probably have to heat them up. Oh wow!
Gosh,
broke loose.
Mr. Muscles.
Let's see how they are. That one's got oil. Square is probably less likely to round off than a hex.
Yeah.
Which might be why they changed it, but I don't know. Service on this corn head is relatively straightforward and simple, other than a trip into town. Just for the simple fact that when this corn head was in, getting looked over for that noise, they checked a few of the gearboxes on the side that drive the auger, in the main drive shaft for all the rows. So we're gonna unhook this and go get our other C8R corn head, see what kind of shape it's in. That was easy. Let's see if we can sneak away with this other corn head without too much of a hassle. Not so much for too much of a hassle. This old cattle loading chute is in the way because a friend borrowed it from us. Not that we have any cattle. And of course I'm not going to be able to get my corn head out. While we wait a couple of days for that tire to get aired up, I just want to comment on an issue that's presented itself in our soybean fields that we don't normally see in such a large quantity, and that is sudden death syndrome, commonly just referred to as SDS in your soybeans. Not something that is typically seen in this geography. You go into Western Illinois, I know it's more of an issue. So we don't normally treat our beans with any premium product like Saltro or Levo to reduce the early season infiltration of this into our plants. However, looking out on this field, our Asgrow 35XF1's standard full spectrum fungicide, but nothing beyond that. So we don't have protection against the SDS fungal pathogen, which kind of takes over the soybean plants very early, but you don't really see it decimate your crop until late in the growing season. And if you can see out across here, we have big swaths of this field with that very typical interveinal necrosis and chlorosis coming on these soybean leaves, which pretty much indicates that it is in fact SDS. And it's probably going to rob some yield out here because I had high hopes of 85 to 90, even 100 bushel beans out here because they've looked phenomenal. We've absolutely laid the juice on them, and Mother Nature presented another hurdle. Unlike insect pressure or other late season fungi, this right here has to be combated early on with a seed treatment, and even then sometimes it's not enough. If we start to see this in large chunks of the field, this could cost us a supreme amount of money. Protecting against this is probably a $10 to $15 an acre seed treatment. It's not foolproof, and there also is genetic resistance. Some soybeans are just better against this disease. Much like you and I as humans have different strengths and weaknesses, so do our soybean plants when it comes to diseases. Could have been something on the management side. We did work this a little wet, planted a little wet, not really too early, and it's had a pretty ideal growing season. These beans, other than the SDS showing up, look just absolutely ridiculous. Yield potential is sky high out here, and they're already fairly filled out. You can tell by the girth of this 3-bean pod out here. I really don't know. If anyone has any expert opinions for me, drop them in the comments below. Could be a non-issue. They could still yield fairly well. I just don't like to see it. We're leaving something on the table when you see this in your beans. 70 pounds. We'll call it there.
Okay, Jeff.
Don't go yet. I'm not ready.
Back there okay?
Yep.
Okay. Good. Keep going.
Time to work on another one. And you can see it's got a missing stalk stomper. So remember to fix that while it's off. Whoa, easy! A little more! Another foot! Whoa! A little aggressive. This pump is arguably the best $100 I've ever spent. The trick to hooking up the corn heads and the drapers is all about alignment. Get it right from the start, it's easy. While he hooks that up, I'm gonna go ahead and pop open the top. Gotta be open for the separator run. Okay, pull this up. Up to our nice fancy workstation. On this corn head we will have to check that main drive chain and the oil bath it's sitting in. Like I said, the other one had been popped open to the dealership. This one hasn't. Usually pretty minimal maintenance there, but you do want to make sure it's the right tightness and an oil. Yeah, definitely oil in there. Guess I need to get a screwdriver to check that. like it should have. Okay. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. We're gonna do a couple more things. We're gonna fix that stock stomper right in there. And each row has a slip clutch on it. We're gonna lubricate those with some grease. We didn't do that on the other one because I didn't have access to the service manual, which I do now. So we know what they need.
That enough? Where do we put the other ones up? Up all the way?
Right about there.
How about right in the middle one to start with?
Yeah, we'll do that and we can readjust later. Got it.
Gonna go. This one doesn't have a spring.
Alright, it's gonna pop off when you go. That's what the spring assembly looks like for one of those.
It was the top one?
Yep. Yep. It's like it never fell off. Now it's time for the real fun part. Greasing up the slip clutches. The nice thing is though is that they call for 10 pumps of grease. So we'll dial in 10. If you had done this one while it was still sitting on the combine, it probably would have been a tad bit easier, but actually plenty of clearance, doesn't look too bad. So now it's time for the old calibration dance. It's really nothing too exciting. Raise the head up, put the head down, move side to side, then some combine calibrations. It's just a lot of dancing, back and forth. A lot of this beeping you hear when the combine's starting is it actually telling me that some of the calibrations have not been done for the combine's threshing system, and doesn't play well if it hasn't gone through its rigorous calibrations. In just a short 20 minutes, I've calibrated the head, up and down, feeder house, those things, the pitch of the combine chassis, the unloading auger and gauge, and I did some secondary calibrations on like the threshing system that probably aren't necessary, but they're pretty easy to just click through on here. It does it automatically, so I figured might as well. Can't hurt to have your combine spec'd too precisely. That being said, we're gonna hook this head, put them away, and then worry about picking corn in about 5 weeks, 6 weeks, hopefully. If not, that means we burn up. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon because there are rains in the forecast, like continuously. We've caught a lot of rains in July and into early August that we did not catch in June. And if anything, we could afford to miss a rain or two, which is saying a lot because soybeans love August rains. We've had plenty of those so far. I believe that I've done everything. And normally when I restart the combine, it beeps at me if something's not been calibrated, like I just said. So I'm going to restart it and see if it beeps. No warnings, so I'd say we're good to go. Actually, we're not. I need to put the screen up here, the secondary monitor, and then I also need to put our Midland radio. Then we'll be ready to go. I did pretty good before lunch, loading and unloading these, but I've had lunch, didn't get a lunchtime nap, so this could be a disaster. Well, you know what? It would help if I unhooked the head. That was not a well thought out plan. Gosh, that's a lot of weight on that little cart. Back this out of the way. And get that corn head secured and put away.
Must be more somewhere else.
Back to the white shed. Did that in one try, didn't even pull up once. Got my display, got my tools. Where do you install this? But we have life. Or we had life, now it's gone. Second monitor has been detected. Please reboot. Okay. Oh, let's go. There it is, we're in action. These monitors must get paid by the hour because they're not moving too quick right now. Planning on probably having that up there like that. I kind of like the idea of having yield data up in this screen, possibly some auto steer stuff, and then we'll just run our main harvest screen down here. Combine settings, just some very quick looks at some harvesting metrics, yield, fuel usage per acre per hour, and how much time we have till an empty tank. And of course, most importantly, our grain tank camera. All right, time to close up shop on this outfit for the day. If I can figure out where the close button is, there it is. Drop her down. That never gets old. I don't know why, but the folding grain tank is just fascinating to me. Take this back over to the other shed. We'll get started on our next project. Both ways about 4 times. 5th time for motorcycles. Let's go. Back inside for the evening, and then tomorrow we're going to work on another set of heads, so we'll be right back out. I think the main issue is that these hydrostatic transmissions just aren't very graceful at road speeds. I either need to move closer to the farm or just stop driving so much in general, because this hasn't gotten any less painful than it was 6 months ago. Talked about the farm fuel. We're empty now, but we contracted some $4 out-the-door fuel into our tanks for this harvest season. I don't know if that was the right call. It was actually done about 6 to 7, maybe 8 weeks ago. Don't quote me on that. We thought it was a good price, and as of right now, it's still very competitive. We'll see moving forward what fuel prices do. It's just kind of a gamble, you know, with the global economic situation, you know, issues over Ukraine, Russia, all that. The fuel market and fuel as a whole, not just petroleum fuels, but natural gas and all those other components, really have been wild. So just trying to make the best decision for our farm. Either way, I wish I had the Fred Flintstone floor option on this truck. I could save a little bit of money, power myself down the road. I was planning on getting the drapers out this morning, but I can't find any of my help. With the degree to which they're puzzled into the barn corner where they are, I'm not sure I'm comfortable pulling them out without a spotter. Who knows? Maybe we can do this by ourselves. Those are what we're trying to get out. That drive over pit might be in the way of the 735 FD. And this boat that is conveniently parked like this is in the way of everything. Oh, would you look at that? They're magically out of the way. I knew there was a reason I didn't go to the gym this morning, because I was going to be pushing a boat. Just kidding, I didn't push that. But this is an example of why you don't mix business and pleasure, because it just causes issues. I think we're going to get the 735 out first, just because these are a little bit wonky with how they steer. They're all-wheel steers, so we want to be very careful when we pull them out that we don't bring it around and hit this. But we also only have a little bit of clearance here with the drive over pit. Seeing that I don't have any spotters, I'm going to be getting in and out a few times to make sure everything's kosher. Wow, doesn't get much better than that, folks. That one looks good. That one looks good. Got plenty of room on this side. It's the west side that's concerning. That's a no-go. I guess I gotta move the drive over. Inconvenient, but that's the truth. All right, that's out of the way. Now we can get the 735 out without much trouble. For the record, these tillage devices across the road are not ours. Okay, we just barely made it out of there. I got about 10 times to make sure we weren't going to clip the door, and we didn't. So we can take this one home. Draper 1 out of 2 is at the farm. This thing is probably a flight risk, if I had to guess, based on the slope of the farm here. Not to mention, if it does get a wild hair on it, it's gonna roll right back into one of our grain bins, which is a double whammy. Not a fan of collateral damage, so I'll at least make some effort to chalk it. Be a good draper and just stay right there, don't go anywhere. Put the drive over pit back inside. I'm not gonna worry about it for a couple weeks. It's pretty easy to move it around. Don't need a combine to service that one. Been hooked up to this draper, we're gonna pull it out. Chris finally showed up to work, so he's gonna watch the back and make sure I don't hit anything. Pleasant to take down the road than that other one. Those single point steer corn heads are one thing. These all-wheel steer carts are like those on steroids. Just an absolute nightmare to back up. Fortunately, I'm an expert and I can do it all in one try. Does this need chalked? Yeah, probably. We'll work on the newer one first, because one would think that it'd be the least amount of work. Although you do know what they say about assuming. We put the combine away yesterday and locked everything down because there was a chance of storms overnight into early this morning. Of course, nothing really came about it. Maybe a few sprinkles here or there. Not that we need any rain because the topsoil is still saturated, a little bit wet. We're gonna get this combine out, pull those drapers off, and start servicing. In some ways, it's like we never even left. Pulling it right back outside, we'll jog to the draper, and then we'll be in action. Servicing the drapers is pretty straightforward. Just remember gearboxes, recircs, and the cutter bar. Shouldn't have any issues with the belts because they're pretty robust, especially on the newer one. If we see anything, we might address it, but for the most part, I think this will be a simple process. Every time I say that, though, disaster unfolds, so maybe just we'll pretend it's gonna be complicated, and when it's easy, we'll be surprised. Wow. Who knows? Maybe I'll get promoted to the combine this year. Now that'd be a shame if I totaled both drapers in one event. When we check the gearboxes on the drapers, we want them on relatively level ground, and this grass strip seems to meet those requirements. Okay, let's dive into this. I will say that we lucked out this year. Normally when we're doing our header maintenance, it's 95 degrees, as humid as it could possibly be, and you're getting swarmed by sweat bees. Fortunately for us, we just have to deal with the sweat bees today because it's only about 80 degrees and not that humid. So it's the little things in life that make the biggest difference. That's about this for my wrenches.
We'll put it.
There's plenty there.
Good thing you moved your wrenches. Bring your oil up.
I mean, there's a little bit on the Well, actually, I don't know. I'm not seeing much. A few extra gearboxes on this one. Oil cases. That's good. So I can't get it threaded back in time. Oh, shh. You've got to be kidding me. We've looked over all the gearboxes. Only one of them was low, and it's down there right on the left side of the draper section. Open up the hopper on the combine now. Dad's hooking up the draper connections, and we're gonna fire this thing up, let it run, limber it up. That way we can get to a few grease zerks that were inaccessible due to circumstances, and then change any broken stickle sections and guards. Few settings to be changed. Other than that, honestly not in bad shape, and it looks like the cutter bar is in good shape as well. Dad's greasing something under the head, so he's got the safety stop down. I'm gonna check out the cutter bar, see if anything needs addressed. You can never remember at the end of the year if we fixed it last or if it's in good shape. We must fix this before we put it away. Yeah, because that's actually a new sickle section right there, just a little rusty. We're already off to a better start with this combine than we were the last one. I don't know if anyone remembers about a year ago when we had the other brand new 780. We went to turn on the first draper and the reel wasn't spinning. We couldn't figure it out. We thought our draper was broken. Turns out that something in one of the hydraulic boxes in the combine was not plugged in, an electric sensor. So that was a service call that seemed kind of silly, but that's, sometimes if something's not plugged in, it's not going to work. So far, everything's been plugged in on this one. You ready? That's good. I didn't know you could do that. Oh, that would involve both my hands and my feet. Had to get a little bit of leverage to get it close. Can you hear that? That's the sound of depreciation. This thing's probably already lost 10% of its value. Got some more calibration to do. Chassis pitch, I thought I already did that. Header not calibrated, feeder house not calibrated, rail position not calibrated. Okay, back to the grindstone, I guess. I dealt with the same exact issue last season on the other draper. That's unfortunate, because I don't believe I could ever get it figured out. We'll do the tried and true, cycle the power. Maybe it'll work next time. Header not calibrated. Okay, we did know that. That is why we restarted it. Run it back one more time. Header calibration, calibrate. Press and hold, the moment of truth. And it didn't work. Okay, I have found that sometimes when sensors are involved, it's easier just to snap a picture, send it to a John Deere mechanic, get it figured out that way, as opposed to running around playing possum on the draper. Everything's good to go except for the most important calibration, the header calibration. Put the top down for the night. That'll do it. Speaking of combines, we had the notorious white combine run through here about 2.5 weeks ago. Dad and I were actually in the red shed over here working on another tractor, and all of a sudden storm came up, kind of popped up out of the blue, ended up being pretty aggressive. Dad and I, shoulder to shoulder, couldn't even hear each other talk. I could barely hear myself think. Although a lot of times you'd associate that with a tremendous amount of damage to your crop, We somehow came out relatively unscathed. There's definitely a little bit of leaf tissue damage on our corn and soybeans, a little bit of pod loss on our soybeans, but nothing really that terrible. I'll drop in some footage I took with my iPhone. Probably pales in comparison to what I carry around every day here, but it'll give you guys a good idea.
Holy cow! It's like a hurricane. Funny to think that a month ago we were really hurting for a rain. Now the rain could probably stop because this is going to start to hurt our crop. Obviously the hail has done physical injury. The water will damage our roots though if it stays saturated.
Based on the sound of the artillery landing on the truck, I'd say it's hailing again. Just right to the south of where Dad and I were in the barn at while it hailed, and you can see very visual symptoms here on the leaves. We've got some punch holes here and there, very indicative of hail damage. We've got some shredding and some actual loss of leaf tissue. On a corn plant at this stage, which is pretty far along in its life, you actually need to see a very large amount of defoliation to look at a large percentage in total yield loss. What they were saying out here is, you know, at the very most, you're looking at a couple of percent of damage. This is from our hail insurance adjusters. Things like this, although the leaf isn't completely attached, as long as the tissue is still attached, it's viable. If the mid vein on the leaf, which is this part that runs right here, is broken, you can pretty much consider everything from that point up dead. Even like this, that's like a sail in the wind, is still viable. Leaves like this though, where the tissue is legitimately removed, that's more damage. Overall though, we're in a very protected state in our corn crop right now. At the end of the day, for our corn crop, although it looks like it got shredded up pretty good, it's at a stage in its life where you really can't do a tremendous amount of damage to it without just completely stripping the plant to the ground. Well, let me put it this way. If there was a severe enough hail that you were worried about a total loss out in your cornfield at this stage, your corn and soybeans are going to be the least of your worries. You're going to be putting new roofs on your houses, new windows on your car. This is very minor damage. And we're starting to see some more tar spot coming in on the leaves there. It's easy to tell if it's tar spot. It looks like tar on the leaves and it won't rub off. That's pretty much the two things you look for to see. That's a disease we've been keeping an eye on, and really not too much out of it as of yet, but it does proliferate very quickly. That's a conversation for a different day. This lovely field of soybeans also saw quite a bit of vegetative loss, especially in the leaf tissue from the hail. The problem with looking at soybeans that's going to mislead some of you is that a lot of this damage you see is actually insect feeding. That's why we spray those insecticides a couple weeks ago to fend off some of that insect pressure. They come back later in the season. They're going to continue to defoliate our plants. It's easier to see hail damage in a corn crop just because the leaves seem to punch out more. Areas like this, we saw a lot of punch holes in the leaves. However, just like the corn, you really need to see a tremendous amount of vegetative damage and defoliation to look at a significant yield loss. What we do see in our beans though, that is much more of an issue than our corn, is pod loss. So we get a heavy rain on here, it lays our beans over, and some hail hits a pod, it will actually drop pods to the ground. I would show you the ground and say, oh, look at all these pods, but it hailed 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Anything that's out here at this point is completely shriveled up and dead. The hail adjusters did look at it. They saw a few here and there, enough to justify a minimum level of payment. Although across the totality of our farm, it was hit and miss where the damage was. Again, nothing like you see on Twitter where those farmers in Nebraska or up in Canada get one of those hailstorms that completely obliterates a field. Just some minor damage. Maybe offers an opportunity for some disease to infiltrate our plants, because wounds are a great place for diseases to get in at. At this point in time though, the disease we're worried about in our soybeans is not related to hail at all, and that is that SDS we talked about earlier on in the video. Alrighty everyone, I think that's more than enough farming for one video. If not for you, definitely for me. Make sure you keep your eyes open, and next week I got another awesome video that should be coming out. We got a new toy showing up, and I think a lot of you have seen it coming and will enjoy to see it once it arrives for harvest. Also, make sure you head over to farmfocus.com, check out my channel's merchandise or any of the awesome content creators on there. There's a lot of really cool stuff, and I think any one of those people would appreciate you supporting their channel or brand. That's gonna be it for me though. I appreciate you all tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you wanna see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day everyone. Peace!